So I just want to say happy grand rising to everyone. Turn to somebody and say happy grand rising. Happy grand rising to you. Happy grand rising. Now, isn't that better than good morning? Like good sadness? You know there's actually a movement to replace good morning with grand rising? Anybody know about that? Yeah, there really is. So here, I'm going to invite you for a whole week. You're going to replace good morning with grand rising. You're going to wake up, tell your dog or cat, grand rising, your neighbor, don't worry, they'll judge you. But at least for the right thing, right? Something really good. So I'm so grateful to be back with you again. And as you may know, I'm a brand new baby minister, Rev Mitch, only a few months into my license, although I've been doing this for a while. And one thing they teach you in ministerial school, that it is a minister's job to comfort the afflicted. And it's also a minister's job to afflict the comfortable. And we might do a little bit of that today. So I'm working with a little book written by Parker Palmer. Who knows Parker Palmer? He's an author, a spiritual leader for social change, so many wonderful things. And the book I'm working with is A Hidden Wholeness, The Journey Towards an Undivided Life, Welcoming the Soul and Weaving Community in a Wounded World. And don't we need that now more than ever? And as I was going through the book and I was reading it, this phrase jumped out at me. And the phrase was rejoining soul and role. Rejoining soul and role. And I thought, that'd make a great talk title. So that's the title of today's talk. And what pulled at me was this idea that we all take on roles in different spaces. Sometimes we're a sister, a mother, a brother in some spaces, or a coworker, or a volunteer, or a colleague, or a neighbor, right? We have all these roles that we step into. And there are times when the world has us in that role and it's pulling at us to step out of what our soul knows to be true. Who's ever experienced that division of soul and role? I think we all have at some point. And I thought today let's talk about it. So I want to talk about what it means to be living from our wholeness, living that undivided life, and the importance of it. Because sometimes we think, I'll just go with the flow. I won't rock the boat. And we don't speak our truth. And we don't know sometimes what's on the other side of that truth that our soul is calling us to speak. And how that might heal the world. So we're going to talk about the importance of it. We're also going to talk about the symptoms of living a divided life. And also we're going to look at what I call the 4 horsemen that keep us from living that undivided life. And lastly, what the journey back looks like to rejoining soul and role. In the book, Parker quotes Thomas Merton, who's a monk, an author, and a mystic. And Thomas says, in all things is a hidden wholeness. See, our wholeness is not dependent upon condition. Although Madison Avenue would have you believe those shoes will make you whole, or that car, or this hairdo, or fill in the blank, right? The wholeness I'm talking about is a perfection of soul that's always been with you. Nothing that the world or anyone's judgment of you can ever diminish, right? And in the book, it talks about our wholeness not meaning perfection according to the world's definition, but embracing the brokenness as an integral part of life. It's a both and that creates this mosaic of wholeness. I've discovered as I've got up and I've spoken over the years, right, as a minister, I'm telling people to do a whole bunch of really important stuff that I'm still learning to do. But I'm still whole. It's a both and. We can be a work in progress and still be whole. In fact, Spirit is always fashioning itself through us in different ways, some ways that we may not always want to have happen. but require us to become a new creation. You know, Parker in the book talks about, he likes to travel up to the boundary waters up in Minnesota, and there's large forests there. He loves the trees there. And he went there in, I think it was 2009, and they had had hurricane force winds there, and 20 million trees were blown down. It was huge devastation. And what he noticed as he went back year after year, he saw how nature started to incorporate all of the devastation into a new creation. The forest was never the same, but maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe it was meant to be a new creation. You know, I'm in my 57th year, aging like fine wine, yes. I actually love it. I actually love it more than I thought I ever would. But you know, when I look back sometimes, I go, man, in my 30s, I had an amazing memory. I had like one of those elephant memories, like I can remember everything. And the temptation now is I don't have that same memory, and there's a part of me that wants to judge myself as not as whole. But if I look at what else is coming in, I've noticed I make a lot better decisions now. I've noticed that some wisdom has dropped in that wasn't there before, that I'm a new creation. And I can look at myself now through this new lens of wholeness, that I'm always becoming another part of the being that's within me that has always been whole, right? And so what is the importance of living this undivided life, of making sure that we're living our truth, that we're standing in it, that we're moving from it? Because it's hard to do in a don't rock the boat world, yes? I mean, there are people we know in different professions, like teachers, some of them are just mailing it in, putting on another movie. Some doctors treat their patients with indifference, oh well. Some supervisors, as the book says, has an employee handbook where a heart should be. You know, they did a study of people in their professions about how much they felt connected to their jobs, whether they really liked their jobs. It was only about 50%. If you look at 4 nurses, 2 of them may not really like their jobs. You better hope you get the right one, right? Anyone remember the WorldCom scandal or the Enron scandal? Anyone remember those scandals? Do you remember who brought those scandals to light? Anyone remember the names of the women? The names of the women were Cynthia Cooper, Colleen Rowley, and Sharon Watkins. And they were nominated by Time magazine in 2002 as Persons of the Year. And these 3 women had to decide between their professional careers and doing what their soul was telling them was right. That these companies had went off the rails. They were not in integrity with the people they were supposed to be serving. And so they spoke out. They decided to go with their soul. They decided to stand in their integrity. And there was a price to pay. Many of them were judged by their colleagues. One woman was quoted as she cried herself to sleep every night. But we wouldn't have been able to stop that corruption and begin to create a better world. See, this work runs deep. And we may have to make a choice about standing in our wholeness, our inner truth, or what Parker Palmer calls our inner teacher that's telling us the right thing to do. So why don't we do it? Why am I even talking about it? Right? What keeps us from standing in that wholeness, that being true to ourselves? You know, Parker Palmer gives a few examples of this in the book I'd like to share with you. He says, the divided life comes in many forms, such as we refuse to invest ourselves in our work, diminishing its quality and distancing ourselves from those it is meant to serve. Just punching the clock, right? Or we remain in settings or relationships that steadily kill off our spirits. Or he says, we hide our beliefs from those who disagree with us to avoid conflict challenge, and change. So I looked at these examples and I came up with what I call the 4 horsemen that keep us from living an undivided life. And the first one is denial. I know, it ain't just a river in Egypt. I love saying that. I have a male friend who's gay, and his parents are very conservative, and they do not embrace his lifestyle at all. But they came to his church, and his partner came over and gave him a kiss. They did a kiss on the hi, honey thing. Now, they saw it, but they just said, oh, that's just his friend, right? They were in denial. They didn't have a place to put that information that the house of their consciousness could hold. So sometimes that's why we're in denial. That truth that comes in, we don't know how to hold it. That's the first horseman. The second one is, we may doubt our inner knowing, right? You ever have that small, still voice come in, and because it whispered, you just discounted it? Didn't think it was really true? And what we know sometimes about this voice is that it's the truest thing we could know. But we think sometimes because it's irrational or it isn't textbook, we shouldn't listen to it. So we doubt our inner knowing. And then the third horseman is fear. We're afraid of judgment, consequences. What if I speak my truth? What if I live my truth? What if I stand in my wholeness? Right? You know what I think fear really is? Metaphysically speaking, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of disconnect from our source. Because when we know that we are a piece of the divine source, God, whatever you call it, that is all powerful, all loving, all wise, always going out before us and preparing the way. When we know we have that kind of partner on our journey, we can never feel fear again. Not really. And then the fourth horseman is the most sneaky one. It's comfort. It's comfort. We get in our comfort zone, right? Why rock that boat when I'm feeling comfortable? Is the discomfort of change really worth living my truth? Because things are going to change in ways that could feel uncomfortable. So what are some of the symptoms of living a divided life? The first one is you feel like a fraud. You feel like, you're in this role, you're kind of doing the thing, you may even be rewarded for it, but you're not living your truth. Or you might feel anxious. You don't know why you always feel anxious when you step into this space or place. There may be a part of you that you're putting behind the curtain. Or maybe you wake up depressed on certain days. You might want to inquire within and ask yourself, what truth are you not living? I remember years ago, I was in this relationship, and we were the it couple, me and my partner. We would throw a karaoke party, 40 people would show up. I'm not kidding. And we'd walk into church, and people would love on us, and from the outside looking in, it looked amazing. On the inside, not so great. The relationship was broken. I knew I shouldn't be in that relationship, but it was comfortable. Everyone loved us. See, so when we don't align with our truth, the wheels start to come off the bus. I remember in 2007, I woke up in the hospital with tubes and wires and bags, hurting from head to toe. And I thought, how did I get here? How did I get here? And the day before, I was in ER all day. They didn't know what to do with me. The surgeon was going to talk to me. They didn't talk to me. My organs were shutting down. They didn't know what to do with me, so they just plugged me into a bunch of bags. Hoped it would all turn out. And what I realized at that point is that everything in my life was bankrupt. I had a lifestyle, not a life. I was a superintendent, had the good job, making the 6 figures, had the big house, had the partnership, had the car. You looked at my life, you think I was winning, and on the inside I was dying. I didn't like my job. I knew I shouldn't have been in partnership. I had a house that was way over what I should have bought. And I wasn't even living authentically in my body at the time. So what happened? I got sick because I was sweeping it all under the rug. There is not a mind-body connection. This is body. This is the subconscious body. You don't digest your food. You don't grow your hair. So when you sweep it under there into the shadows, this starts speaking out. And what I realized in that 7 days, it felt like dog days every day, is I needed to leave my job. I didn't love it. It was somebody else's job. I needed to go. And what I realized, it was killing me. And I thought, well, who's going to pay the bills? And I thought, well, a dead person can't pay bills very well. Right? And then I realized something else. If I lose the job or the house or the career or the person or whatever, I can get that back, but I can't get time back. It's the most precious resource we have. And what I had discovered on that journey of if it's not this, then what is it? It's speaking, it's teaching, it's writing. I had a vision when I went on this journey of what is my calling? What is my soul pulling me towards? But I had to take a risk to live my truth. And I took the leap. And you know what happened? Yeah, I lost the house, bankruptcy, the partner, the car. I had to address some addiction issues. I had to go on this whole healing journey. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat to have this life. One that I'm proud of. One that I feel in integrity with. And that's what's at stake here. And the most important part of this is we got to make a choice. So I'm going to invite you right now, make a choice. Right now. That no matter what role or space that you step into, you're going to live your soul's truth. Because if you make that choice now, you don't have to guess what your answer is when the world tries to pull us in a different direction. When you make that choice now. So I'm going to invite you to choose to live your truth, to speak your truth. Mel Robbins says there's some side effects to speaking your truth. You heal yourself. You inspire others. You become bomb AF. That's as Farfanugan for the audience. You live authentically. You attract the most beautiful souls. You vibrate higher and attract what you want. You create a ripple in the universe. So I'm going to invite you now to think about some areas of your relationship. We're going to drop in no shame, no blame, no judgment. So let's just take a breath in and drop in. Are you living your truth in relationship? Maybe there's a friend you know who isn't in integrity with you, that it's time to end that friendship. Or a neighbor, or a family member. Or perhaps it's in the area of your finances. Maybe it's time to heal that disconnect. To not keep buying things on Amazon. Shoppicating. To make a budget. To live in integrity of self-care in your finances. Or maybe it's in your area of work or service. Is what you're doing really for you? Or you're just living out of habit, out of comfort? Perhaps it's in the area of health. Maybe your soul is saying it's time to quit sugar and flour. Maybe it's time to exercise, to care for yourself. I'm just going to invite you right now to make a choice. Because that's where all things start. That's where all things flow. And I just invite you back into the room. I love Ambrose Redman's definition of courage because it takes courage to live our truth. Ambrose says, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than the fear. What's being called through you, to you, is more important than the fear. And when we realize that fear is only a disconnect of us in consciousness to source, and that source has always got us, there is nothing to fear. And that pull of your soul into that role is your divine assignment to heal a world that needs you now more than ever. More than ever. So don't judge that small, still voice that tells you do this. Because sometimes we say, oh, it's just a small thing. Who knows Toys for Tots? Anyone know Toys for Tots? Yeah, a lady one day got an idea, and she said, a lot of kids that don't have toys. And she got some friends together. And now we all know what this is. But what if she judged that? What if she said, oh, I'm not enough. It won't make a difference. I know there's somebody in here who's being called. So I have to call you out. That's my job. So I hope you commit to choose to live an undivided life, and that you trust in this substance, this source, this being that is beating your heart, growing your hair, breathing you. You can't even wake yourself up in the morning, to also support you in standing in the truth it gave you, by the way. No accidents. And that you lean into a loving, supporting community like this or some other community that can help you walk and talk when you're feeling nervous or unsure. Maya Angelou says, a good done anywhere is a good done everywhere. There's only one of us. And I want to leave you with the words of the prophet Khalil Gibran. He says, do not live half a life, and do not die half a death. If you choose silence, be silent. When you speak, do so until you are finished. If you accept, then express it bluntly. Do not mask it. If you refuse, then be clear about it. For an ambiguous refusal is but a weak acceptance. Do not accept half a solution. Do not believe half a truth. Do not dream half a dream. Do not fantasize about half hopes. Half the way will get you nowhere. You are a whole that exists to live a whole life, not half a life. And so it is.